German Shepherd gives birth to a rare puppy. What happens next leaves everyone in tears. Warning: this story will touch your heart in ways you never expected. So get your tissues ready for an unforgettable journey of love, hope, and miracles. Don't forget to share where you're watching from in the comments below. The night hung heavy over Sage Mitchell's farmhouse, a stillness so profound it seemed to pulse with secrets, as if the world itself held its breath. It was March 25th, 2025, and outside, the wind howled like a chorus of restless spirits, clawing at the old wooden shutters with invisible hands. Rain streaked the windows in jagged lines, distorting the world beyond into a blur of shadow and silver. Sage stood there, her reflection a faint ghost in the glass, her green eyes, sharp as forest moss, searching the darkness for something she couldn't name. In her hands, she clutched a mug of chamomile tea, its warmth long gone, leaving only a cold weight that mirrored the dread creeping up her spine. Her fingers tightened around the ceramic, trembling not from the chill but from a fear she felt deep in her bones. Beside her, Nova paced. The German Shepherd's nails clicked against the worn floorboards, a relentless rhythm that set Sage's nerves alight. Nova wasn't just a dog, she was a survivor, a piece of Sage's soul given fur and amber eyes. 2 years ago, Sage had found her broken and bleeding on a rain-soaked highway, a life discarded with a 20% chance to cling to this world. Against all odds, they'd fought together, defying the vet's grim verdict with whispered promises and stubborn hope. Now, heavily pregnant, Nova should have been resting, her usual vibrancy softened by impending motherhood. But tonight, she was restless, her ears twitching at phantom sounds, her gaze darting to corners where shadows danced. "What's wrong, girl?" Sage murmured, her voice a fragile thread woven into the storm's tapestry. She knelt, her hand sinking into Nova's thick fur, feeling the tension coiled beneath. Nova's amber eyes met hers, wide and flickering with something like fear or a warning. The air grew thicker, the wind's wail rising to a fevered pitch, rattling the shutters as if desperate to break in. Sage's heart thudded, a drumbeat of unease. Something was coming, something terrible, something unstoppable. Then it happened. Nova froze mid-step, her body rigid as stone, her gaze locking with Sage's in a moment of crystalline stillness. Time seemed to halt, the world narrowing to the space between them. And then, a howl. It tore from Nova's throat, raw and primal, a sound so heart-wrenching it shattered the silence and sent Sage's mug crashing to the floor. Ceramic shards scattered like fallen stars as Nova collapsed, her sides heaving, blood pooling beneath her in a dark, glistening stain. "Nova!" Sage's cry was a plea, her knees hitting the floor as she reached for her companion. The shepherd's breaths came sharp and pained, each one a dagger in Sage's chest. "No, no, sweet girl, I'm here. I'm right here." Her hands trembled as they brushed Nova's fur, slick with sweat and blood. This wasn't just labor. This was a battle, a precipice between life and loss. The storm outside roared louder, a mirror to the chaos within, but Sage's world shrank to the dog who'd saved her as much as she'd saved it. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "Hold on. Please hold on." Little did she know this night would birth more than puppies. It would birth a miracle that would touch the world. The storm's howl faded to a mournful whisper outside Sage Mitchell's farmhouse. But inside, the air thrummed with a different kind of tempest, one of fear, love, and fragile hope. Sage knelt on the cold wooden floor, her hands pressed against Nova's trembling flank, the German Shepherd's blood staining her fingers a dark, accusing red. Nova's amber eyes, usually so fierce and bright, flickered with pain, her breaths sharp and ragged as if each one cost her a piece of her soul. Sage's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic rhythm that matched the clicking of Nova's nails just moments before. "Hold on, sweet girl," she whispered, her voice breaking like glass under the weight of her terror. "We've been through too much for this to be the end." Her mind spiraled back, unbidden, to a night 2 years past, a night that had carved itself into her bones like a scar she'd never shed. It was late October, the sky a bruised expanse of gray, weeping rain in sheets that turned Highway 23 into a river of shadows. Sage had been driving home from a long shift at the shelter, her windshield wipers slashing futilely against the downpour, when her headlights caught a glint, something small, broken, discarded on the muddy shoulder. She slowed, her breath catching as the beam illuminated a crumpled form. A German shepherd, her fur matted with blood and rain, her body twisted at an unnatural angle. Sage slammed on the brakes, her truck skidding to a stop as she leapt out, the cold biting into her skin like 1,000 tiny teeth. She'd knelt then, too, her knees sinking into the sodden earth, her hands hovering over the dog's still form. "Oh, God," she'd breathed, her voice lost to the wind. The shepherd's eyes fluttered open, amber pools of pain and defiance, locking onto Sage with a plea she couldn't ignore. Blood seeped from wounds too numerous to count, her ribs rising faintly beneath a coat that should have been thick and proud but was now a sodden ruin. Sage didn't think. She acted, bundling the dog into her jacket, her arms trembling as she carried her to the truck. The drive to the vet was a blur of tears and whispered promises. "Stay with me. You're not alone anymore. I've got you." Dr. Marcus had been waiting, his clinic a beacon in the storm. "She's been hit," he'd said, his hands moving with practiced urgency as he examined her. "Broken leg, internal bleeding, shock. 20% chance, Sage. It might be kinder to let her go." His voice was gentle, but the words landed like blows. Sage had shaken her head, her jaw tight. "No, she's fighting. Look at her eyes. She wants to live." Dr. Marcus had sighed, a flicker of doubt in his gaze, but he'd nodded. "Then we fight with her." Days bled into weeks, then months. Sage slept on the clinic floor, her hand resting on Nova's crate, whispering stories of the life they'd share if she pulled through. She named her Nova, not just for the star-like gleam in her eyes, but for the explosion of hope she'd ignited in Sage's weary heart. Antibiotics dripped through IV lines, bandages wrapped her shattered leg, and slowly, so slowly, Nova's spirit clawed its way back. The first time she'd stood, wobbling but defiant, Sage had wept, burying her face in Nova's fur. "We did it," she'd murmured. "You and me, girl. We're fighters." That bond, forged in rain and resilience, was a lifeline now as Sage knelt beside Nova on this stormy March night. The kitchen floor was cold beneath her, the blood pooling around Nova a stark reminder of how fragile that victory had been. "You remember that night, don't you?" Sage said, her voice thick with tears as she pressed her forehead to Nova's. "Everyone said to let you go, said it was kinder, said you wouldn't make it. But we proved them wrong, didn't we? We're still here, still fighting, so don't you dare leave me now, not after everything. Fight for me, girl. Fight for your babies." Nova's tail thumped weakly against the floor. Once. Twice. A promise etched in the faint wag of a mother too stubborn to give up. Sage's hands moved instinctively, stroking Nova's fur, feeling the heat of her labor, the shudder of her pain. She'd delivered puppies before. Her small rescue operation had seen its share of new lives, but this was different. This wasn't just birth, it was a battle, a war waged in the space between heartbeats. Nova's cries weren't the usual whimpers of labor. They carried an undertone of terror that sank into Sage's marrow, chilling her more than the storm ever could. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with blood and sweat as she dialed Dr. Marcus. "The puppies are coming," she said, forcing her voice steady, though it trembled at the edges. "But something's wrong. I can feel it. There's too much blood and she's fading." Her words cracked, betraying the fear she tried to bury. "I'm on my way," Dr. Marcus replied, his calm a lifeline through the static. "Stay with her, Sage. Keep her grounded. You know what to do until I get there. Remember what we practiced." The call ended, and Sage set the phone down, her hands returning to Nova's side. "He's coming, girl," she whispered, her breath hitching as Nova let out another pained whimper. "Just hold on a little longer. You're not alone. I'm right here, like I was that night. We've got this. We always do." She leaned closer, her cheek brushing Nova's ear, the familiar scent of her fur, earthy, warm, alive, grounding her amidst the chaos. "You saved me back then, you know. I was lost, running that shelter, pouring everything into dogs no one else wanted, but feeling so damn empty. Then you came along, all broken and fierce, and you gave me something to fight for. Now it's my turn. I'm fighting for you." The wind outside softened, its wail giving way to a mournful drizzle that tapped against the windows like tears. Inside, though, the storm raged on. Not in the air, but in the space between Sage and Nova, where love and desperation collided. Nova's eyes met hers again, and in them, Sage saw not just pain, but trust. A trust that had carried them through that rain-soaked night 2 years ago, and now anchored them in this one. She clung to it, her hands steadying as she murmured, "We've beaten the odds before, haven't we? Let's do it again. For you, for me, for them." The room seemed to hold its breath, the ticking of the clock swallowed by the sound of Nova's labored gasps. Sage's world narrowed to the dog before her, the dog who'd become her mirror, her strength, her reason. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, as they always had. And as the headlights of Dr. Marcus's truck pierced the darkness beyond the window, Sage felt a flicker of hope ignite, a tiny flame, fragile but fierce, ready to burn against the night. The kitchen floor was a battlefield, strewn with the wreckage of a night that refused to yield to peace. Sage Mitchell knelt in the dim glow of a single lamp, its light casting long shadows that danced like specters across the walls. The storm outside had softened to a drizzle, its gentle patter a cruel contrast to the chaos unfolding within. Nova lay before her, the German shepherd's once majestic frame reduced to a trembling heap, her fur slick with sweat and streaked with blood. The air was thick with the coppery scent of it, a dark pool spreading beneath her, glistening like spilled ink in the lamplight. Sage's hands, stained red, moved with a steadiness she didn't feel, her green eyes locked on Nova's amber ones, eyes that flickered with pain but held a trust that pierced her soul. "It's okay, girl," Sage whispered, her voice a fragile thread woven through the storm's aftermath. "I'm here. We're doing this together." Her words were a mantra, a plea, as she pressed a towel against Nova's side, trying to stem the tide of blood that seemed to carry her life away with it. She'd delivered puppies before, dozens of times in her years running the rescue, but this was no ordinary birth. This was a fight, a desperate struggle etched in every shudder of Nova's body, every sharp, pained breath that tore from her throat. The clock ticked past midnight, its hands creeping forward as if reluctant to bear witness. Sage worked tirelessly, her fingers trembling but sure, guided by instinct and the memory of countless litters brought into the world under her care. The first puppy came, a robust male, his coat a mirror of Nova's dark markings, his cries strong and insistent as they sliced through the silence. Sage's heart leapt, a flicker of relief breaking through her fear as she cleaned him, his tiny body warm and wriggling in her hands. "Good boy," she murmured, nestling him against Nova's belly, where he latched on with hungry determination. Nova's tail thumped weakly, once a faint echo of pride, and Sage smiled through her tears. "See? You're doing it, girl." The second followed swiftly, another healthy pup, its lungs announcing its arrival with a vigor that filled the room. Then a third, smaller but no less vibrant, its cries joining its siblings in a chorus of life. Sage moved with practiced grace, wiping them clean, tucking them close to their mother's warmth. "3 beautiful babies," she said, her voice soft as she stroked Nova's head. "You're amazing, you know that?" Nova's eyes met hers, and for a moment, There was a glimmer of the fierce spirit Sage had fallen in love with, a spark that had carried them through that rain-soaked night 2 years ago. But Nova wasn't done. Her body tensed again, her sides heaving with a force that seemed to drain the light from her eyes. Sage's breath caught, her hands hovering as Nova let out a cry unlike any before, raw, primal, laced with a terror that sank into Sage's bones like ice. "What's wrong?" she whispered, her voice trembling as she leaned closer. Nova's head lifted, her gaze locking with Sage's in a moment of unbearable stillness. And then it came. The fourth puppy. Time slowed, the world narrowing to the tiny form that emerged into Sage's waiting hands. It was impossibly small, barely half the size of its siblings, its body fragile as a whisper. Its fur shimmered with a strange, mottled sheen, a silvery hue that caught the lamplight and turned it into something otherworldly, like moonlight trapped in a coat too delicate to hold it. Sage's breath hitched, a gasp of awe swallowed by dread as she realized the truth. The puppy wasn't moving. It lay still in her palms, its tiny chest silent, its warmth already slipping away like sand through her fingers. "No," Sage breathed, the word a broken prayer as she cradled the lifeless form. "No, no, no." Her hands trembled, the cold seeping into her skin as tears blurred her vision. She looked at Nova, and what she saw shattered her heart. The shepherd's head lifted weakly, her amber eyes, those eyes that had defied death once before, brimming with a sorrow so profound it felt human. A desperate whine escaped her throat as she stretched toward her smallest pup, her body shaking with the effort. "Nova!" Sage choked, her voice cracking under the weight of their shared grief. "I'm so sorry." The puppy was so small, so perfect in its stillness, a silver angel fallen too soon. Sage's fingers traced its twisted legs, its delicate frame, as if touch alone could coax life back into it. "You fought so hard," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Why isn't that enough?" Nova's whine grew louder, a mother's lament that echoed in Sage's chest, amplifying her own despair. She wanted to scream, to rage against the unfairness of it, but all she could do was hold the tiny body closer, as if her warmth could rewrite fate. Headlights swept across the room, slicing through the darkness like a blade of hope. The rumble of Dr. Marcus's truck broke the spell, and the door burst open, his boots leaving muddy prints on the floor as he rushed in. His medical bag swung at his side, his face etched with urgency. But one look at Sage, kneeling there, tear-streaked and clutching the still pup, told him everything. "Sage," he said, his voice quiet but firm as he knelt beside her. "Give him to me." She couldn't move. Her fingers were locked around the cold form, her heart refusing to let go. "He's gone," she whispered, her voice barely audible over Nova's whimpers. "He didn't even get a chance." "Sage, Doctor," Marcus said again, more insistent, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Let me try." His tone was gentle but unyielding, a tether pulling her back from the edge. With shaking hands, she surrendered the puppy, her breath hitching as Dr. Marcus took it into his care. He worked quickly, his fingers deft as he cleared the tiny airway, then began chest compressions. Delicate, precise, a dance of hope against despair. 1 minute passed, then 2, each second an eternity marked by Nova's mournful cries and the soft patter of rain against the windows. "Please," Sage whispered, her hands clutching Nova's fur as if anchoring them both. "Please, don't take him from her. Not after everything." Her tears fell freely now, soaking into Nova's coat, mingling with the blood and sweat of a night that had asked too much. She watched Dr. Marcus, his brow furrowed, his hands steady, and prayed for a miracle she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Then, a sound. Faint, fragile, like the first breath of dawn after an endless night. A gasp, so soft it might have been imagined, but Sage's heart leapt as the puppy's chest moved, just once, a tremble of life against the odds. Dr. Marcus didn't pause, his fingers coaxing another breath, then another, until the tiny form stirred in his hands. "He's fighting," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he looked up at Sage. "But you need to understand. He's different. Severe defects, weak heart, underdeveloped lungs, these twisted legs. The chances of him surviving even the next 24 hours." He trailed off, but Sage didn't need him to finish. She saw it in his eyes, the same doubt he'd carried that night 2 years ago when Nova lay broken on his table. "He's not going anywhere," she said, her voice firm despite the tears, echoing the defiance that had saved Nova then. "If he's fighting, we're fighting with him. He's ours." Dr. Marcus sighed, a glimmer of admiration breaking through his weariness. "Then we move fast. He'll need tube feeding, constant warmth, round-the-clock care. He's too weak to nurse, too small to stay with his siblings. They could crush him. But he needs to be close to Nova. The next few days will tell us everything." Sage nodded, her gaze dropping to the tiny pup, his silvery fur catching the light like a beacon in the dark. "Luna," she whispered suddenly, the name spilling from her lips unbidden. "His name is Luna, because he came to us on this strange, magical night, and because he shines like moonlight." Her fingers brushed his fragile form, a vow sealed in the touch. "Luna it is," Dr. Marcus said, preparing an IV for Nova, his hands steady once more. "But Sage, even with everything we can do—" He didn't finish, but she heard the warning in his silence. "I know," she said softly, her eyes never leaving Luna. "But everyone deserves a chance to prove the world wrong, don't they?" Nova's tail thumped again, weak but resolute, and Sage clung to that promise as the night stretched on, a fragile flame flickering against the shadows. The kitchen lamp flickered, casting a warm, unsteady glow over the makeshift sanctuary Sage Mitchell had carved out of her living room. The storm had long since faded, leaving only a soft drizzle to tap against the windows, like a lullaby too gentle for the war raging within these walls. 3 days had passed since Luna's birth. 3 days that stretched into an eternity of blood, sweat, and whispered prayers. Sage sat cross-legged on the hardwood floor, her hands trembling as she measured a syringe of special formula, her green eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The clock on the wall ticked relentlessly toward dawn, its hands a silent judge of her sleepless vigil. She hadn't rested more than snatched moments, 20 minutes here, 10 there, since that first night when Luna's tiny gasp had pulled her back from despair. Before her, the room was transformed. A padded box lined with heated blankets cradled Luna, its edges soft and protective, a fragile fortress for a life hanging by a thread. His siblings, Storm, Thunder, and Rain, lay nestled against Nova's belly a few feet away, their robust cries a stark contrast to Luna's silence. The German shepherd's amber eyes never left her smallest pup, her body angled so she could see and smell him despite the distance Dr. Marcus had insisted upon. They could crush him, he'd warned, his voice heavy with the weight of truth. He's too weak, too small. So Sage had positioned Luna's box close enough for Nova to feel his presence, a compromise born of love and necessity. Every 2 hours, like clockwork, Sage prepared the formula, a painstaking ritual that demanded precision. One wrong move, one slip of the syringe, and the liquid could flood Luna's underdeveloped lungs instead of his stomach. Her hands shook with fatigue, the weight of each breath he took pressing against her chest. She fed him through a tiny tube, her fingers delicate as they guided it. Her breath held until she saw his chest rise and fall, a sign that life still clung to him. "Come on, little moon," she murmured, her voice raw from endless encouragement. "You've got this. Just one more swallow." His silvery fur caught the light, a faint shimmer that made him look like a star fallen to earth, too fragile to belong here, yet too stubborn to fade. Nova watched, her intelligence a quiet marvel that broke Sage's heart anew each time. Whenever Luna's breathing faltered, those shallow, irregular gasps that sent Sage's pulse racing, Nova would let out a specific whine, sharp and urgent, a mother's alarm honed by instinct. Sage had learned to heat it instantly, dropping whatever she held to check the heating pad, adjust the tube, or simply press her hand to Luna's tiny chest, feeling for the faint thud of his heart. "You're extraordinary. You know that?" Sage whispered to Nova, her hand resting on the shepherd's head. "You're keeping him alive as much as I am." Nova's tail thumped once, a weary acknowledgement, her eyes never leaving her silver pup. The other puppies thrived, their cries demanding milk and attention, their bodies growing stronger by the hour. Sage tended to them too, her movements mechanical as she ensured their warmth, their comfort. Yet her soul stayed tethered to Luna. He was silent, his presence a whisper against the clamor of his siblings. But every breath he took was a victory, a defiance of the odds Dr. Marcus had laid out that first night. "The next few days will be critical," he'd said, his hands still stained with Nova's blood as he'd set up the IV. "Puppies like him, they often don't make it." Sage had nodded, but inside she'd vowed, "Not this one, not my Luna." The weight of that vow bore down on her now, her body aching from the strain, her mind a fog of fear and determination. She hadn't left the house, hadn't showered, hadn't eaten more than a few bites of stale bread snatched between feedings. The world outside her farmhouse felt distant, irrelevant, until the door creaked open on that third night, and Claire stepped in, her arms laden with grocery bags and her brow furrowed with worry. "Sage," Claire said softly, her voice cutting through the haze as she took in the scene, the disheveled woman on the floor, the makeshift puppy hospital, the shadows under Sage's eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Mrs. Peterson called me. Said she hasn't seen you in days, not even a glimpse through the window. What's going on?" Sage barely looked up, her focus on the syringe as she drew the last of the formula. "I can't leave them," she said, her voice hoarse, cracked from disuse. "Luna needs feeding every 2 hours. His temperature drops if the heating pad shifts even a little. He's so fragile, Claire." Her hands trembled, spilling a precious drop, and she cursed under her breath, the sound swallowed by Nova's soft whine, an echo of concern that mirrored Claire's. Claire set the bags down, her steps quiet as she crossed the room. She knelt beside Sage, her gaze sweeping over Luna's tiny form, his silvery fur rising and falling with each shallow breath. "When did you last eat?" she asked, her tone gentle but firm. "Or shower? Or sleep more than a blink?" Sage opened her mouth to answer, then closed it, her mind blank. I don't know," she admitted, her shoulders sagging as the truth settled in. "I can't stop. He needs me. They all do." Her eyes flicked to Nova, then back to Luna, a tear slipping down her cheek. "If I stop, what if he doesn't make it?" Claire's hand rested on Sage's, stilling the tremor. "You're no good to any of them if you collapse," she said, her voice a lifeline in the storm of Sage's exhaustion. "Let me help. I'm making you something to eat. Something hot. Something real. Then you're going to shower while I watch Luna. Dr. Marcus showed me how to tube feed, remember? You can teach me the rest." She squeezed Sage's hand, her eyes soft but unyielding. "You're not alone in this." Tears welled in Sage's eyes, gratitude, fear, relief blending into a flood she couldn't hold back. "Claire, I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking," Claire cut in, her tone softening as she glanced at Luna. "I'm telling you. Besides, someone needs to document this miracle." She gestured to the tiny pup, his paw twitching in his sleep, a faint spark of life against the odds. "Miracle?" Sage echoed, her voice a whisper as she followed Claire's gaze. Luna lay there, so small he could fit in her palm, his silvery sheen a haunting beauty despite his frailty. "He wasn't breathing 3 days ago," Claire said, her words steady with conviction. "You held him, cold and still, and now he's here, still fighting. That's not just survival, Sage. That's something bigger. People need to see this, need to know the impossible can happen." As if on cue, Luna let out a squeak, the first sound he'd made since that fragile gasp at birth. It was weak, barely audible, but it pierced Sage's heart like a song. Nova's head snapped up, her tail wagging as she dragged herself closer, nosing her smallest pup with a tenderness that brought fresh tears to Sage's eyes. Luna squeaked again, stronger this time, his tiny paws reaching for his mother's warmth. Sage felt something shift in her chest, a spark of hope igniting into a flame, small but fierce. Claire was right. This wasn't just a fight for life, it was a story begging to be told. With trembling fingers, Sage reached for her phone, the screen cold against her skin as she opened the camera. "Let me tell you about Luna," she began, her voice steadying as she filmed him, his silvery glow catching the lamplight. "The vet said he wouldn't survive the night. That was 3 days ago. Never stop believing in miracles." Her hands shook as she uploaded it late that night, after Claire had forced her to eat a bowl of soup and rest for an hour on the couch. When she woke for Luna's next feeding, her phone buzzed incessantly, notifications lighting up the dark. The video had exploded, millions of views, comments flooding in. "I'm crying at work right now. That little silver puppy is the strongest thing I've ever seen. Please keep updating us. We're praying for him." Sage stared, stunned, her exhaustion giving way to awe. Luna's fight had touched the world, a ripple spreading beyond her farmhouse walls. As she looked at him, his chest rising and falling with a determination she could feel in her soul, she realized this was only the beginning, a battle just starting to light up the darkness. The dawn broke soft and gray over Sage Mitchell's farmhouse, its light filtering through the rain-streaked windows to paint the living room in hues of quiet resilience. A week had passed since Luna's birth. A week of sleepless nights, trembling hands, and a hope so fragile it felt like holding smoke. Sage sat on the floor, her back against the couch, the familiar syringe of formula steady in her grip now, her movements honed by repetition. Luna lay in his padded box, his silvery fur a faint glow under the morning light, his breaths shallow but persistent. Beside him, Nova rested, her amber eyes fixed on her smallest pup, a sentinel of love and vigilance. The other puppies, Storm, Thunder, and Rain, tumbled over each other in playful chaos, their robust cries a stark reminder of the life Luna fought to claim. Sage's phone buzzed incessantly on the coffee table, its screen alight with notifications that had multiplied overnight like stars in a clear sky. The video she'd uploaded, those shaky, tearful moments of Luna's story, had spiraled beyond her wildest imagining. Millions had watched, their voices spilling into the comments. "I'm crying at my desk. This silver angel is breaking my heart. My daughter has cerebral palsy and she says Luna's like her, different but determined. Please keep updating us. We're all praying for him." Sage stared at the screen, her exhaustion eclipsed by a swell of awe. She'd poured her soul into that video, a desperate whisper into the void, and the world had answered with a roar of compassion. But fame was a double-edged sword, and it cut deep. The phone rang again. News stations clamoring for interviews, their voices eager and insistent through the speaker. Animal welfare groups reached out too, some with offers of supplies and support, others with sharp-edged questions. Is it humane to keep him alive? Are you prolonging his suffering for attention? Sage's chest tightened, each accusation a splinter under her skin. She confided in Claire one morning, the two of them huddled over mugs of coffee gone cold, Luna's box a quiet anchor between them. "I don't know how to handle this," Sage admitted, her voice raw as she prepared Luna's formula, her hands now confident despite the weight of sleepless days. "Some people are saying I'm cruel, selfish, that I'm chasing internet fame while he's fighting just to breathe." Claire set her mug down, her gaze steady as she watched Luna drag himself toward Nova, his front paws stronger now, his determination a quiet fire in his fragile frame. "Does he look like he's suffering to you?" she asked, her tone soft but pointed. Luna reached his mother, his tiny head lifting as he attempted to nurse, a milestone Dr. Marcus had deemed impossible just days ago. Nova lay still, adjusting her position to make it easier, her other pups nudging aside to give their silver brother space. "Look at him, Sage," Claire continued, her voice rising with conviction. "He's getting stronger every day. That's not suffering, that's living." Sage wiped a tear from her cheek, her breath catching as Luna's tongue flicked out, tasting his mother's milk for the first time. "Last night," she said, her voice trembling with wonder, "he barked. It was more like a squeak, but still. It was him, Claire. He's trying so hard." The memory of that sound, a faint, defiant note in the stillness, had lit a spark in her chest, a warmth she clung to amidst the storm of doubt. Claire's eyes softened, but her resolve didn't waver. "Then let's show them," she said, reaching for her laptop. "Let's keep telling his story. Let the world see what you see. He's not just surviving, he's fighting for something bigger." Sage nodded, her heart heavy but buoyed by Claire's faith, a faith that mirrored her own stubborn hope. That afternoon, the phone rang again, its shrill tone cutting through the quiet. Sage answered, her hands still damp from Luna's feeding, and Dr. Marcus's voice came through, grave, urgent, a shadow over the fragile light of the morning. "Sage, we need to talk about Luna's latest test results," he said without preamble. "I found something concerning. Can you come to the clinic and bring him?" Her blood ran cold, the room tilting as fear clawed at her throat. "How bad is it?" she whispered, her hand clutching the phone so tightly her knuckles whitened. Nova pressed against her leg, whining softly, sensing the shift in her human's heartbeat. Silence stretched on the other end, an eternity compressed into seconds before Dr. Marcus spoke again. "It's his heart, Sage. The defect. It's worse than we thought. Without surgery, he won't make it past his first month. And the surgery..." He paused, his breath heavy with sorrow. "It's costly, more than most people make in a year, and even then the success rate is less than 30%. Sage's world spun, her knees buckling as she sank to the floor beside Nova. The shepherd nuzzled her, her warmth a lifeline as Sage's gaze fell to Luna, now contentedly resting after his attempt to nurse, his silver fur glowing in the soft light. He'd already overcome so much, born still, brought back by a miracle, fighting through days of fragility. And now this? "How long does he have without it?" she asked, her voice cracking like dry earth underfoot. 2 weeks, maybe 3, doctor," Marcus said, his tone thick with regret. "I'm so sorry, Sage. I know how much you and Nova have invested in him, but sometimes..." "No!" Sage cut him off, her voice suddenly firm, a steel forged in the fire of their shared battles. "We didn't come this far to give up now. There has to be a way." She looked at Luna, his tiny tail wagging faintly as he sensed her attention, oblivious to the shadow looming over him. Then to Nova, who'd refused to abandon her smallest pup from the moment he'd drawn breath. And finally to Claire, who was already pulling out her laptop, determination blazing in her eyes. "We'll find a way," Sage said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Somehow, we're going to save him. Because Luna's story isn't over yet. It's only just beginning." Claire's fingers flew across the keyboard before Sage had even finished speaking. "We need to set up a fundraising page, right now," she said, her voice urgent. "People are already asking in the comments how they can help. Let me handle the social media. You focus on Luna." Sage nodded, her heart pounding as she watched Claire work, the screen lighting up with a new hope. What happened next was nothing short of a miracle, a testament to the human heart's capacity for kindness. Within hours of Claire posting about Luna's condition, the story exploded further. The local news station, which had been hounding Sage for days, finally got their piece, not through a polished interview, but through Angela Chen, their veteran anchor, who arrived at the farmhouse unannounced. She'd lost her own dog to a heart condition the year before, and when she stepped into Sage's living room, her eyes were already brimming with tears. Angela sank to the floor beside Luna, heedless of her crisp blazer, and let him wobble toward her on his strengthening legs. His tail wagged with innocent joy, his silver fur catching the camera's light as it followed her every move.
"I've covered thousands of stories," she said, looking directly into the lens, her voice thick with emotion. "But I've never seen anything like this. This isn't just about saving a puppy. It's about hope, about fighting against impossible odds, about a community coming together to prove miracles still exist." The segment aired that evening, and the response was instantaneous. The fundraising page crashed twice from the traffic, donations pouring in from every corner of the globe. $1 from a child's piggy bank, $5 from a single mother, hundreds from strangers moved by Luna's fight. Letters flooded Sage's mailbox. Packages arrived on her doorstep, specially formulated puppy milk, heating pads, soft blankets. One letter stood out, its handwriting shaky but resolute. "My son was born with a heart defect. The doctor said he wouldn't survive his first week. He's 8 now and plays Little League. Luna reminds me so much of him. That same fight, that same spirit. Please don't give up. Miracles happen every day." Sage read it aloud to Claire, her voice breaking as tears fell onto the paper. Luna had grown stronger in those days, his wobbly attempts to move, his faint barks like squeaks of triumph, but time was slipping away. The world had rallied, their love a chorus that echoed through her farmhouse, yet Sage knew it would take more than money to save him. As she looked at Luna, his silvery glow a beacon in her shadowed world, she felt their hope ignite, a flame that would burn brighter than ever, fueled by a community she'd never known she had. The afternoon sun spilled through the farmhouse windows, casting golden patches across the living room floor where Sage Mitchell sat, her knees drawn up, her eyes fixed on Luna. 10 days had passed since Dr. Marcus's devastating call. 10 days of fragile victories and whispered prayers, each one a thread in the tapestry of hope that now stretched beyond her walls to touch the world. Luna lay in his padded box, a soft toy, sent by a stranger who'd seen his story, clutched between his tiny paws. His silvery fur caught the light, shimmering like a piece of the sky fallen to earth, and for a moment, Sage let herself believe he was winning. His front legs, once so weak, now propelled him in determined wobbles, his faint barks, more squeaks than roars, ringing out like tiny bells of triumph. Beside him, Nova rested, her amber eyes soft with a mother's pride. Her presence a steady anchor in the storm of uncertainty. The fundraising page glowed on Claire's laptop nearby, the numbers climbing higher with each refresh, proof of a world that refused to let Luna go. Donations had poured in, letters and packages stacking up on Sage's porch like offerings to a fragile god. Children broke open piggy banks, a local artist sold Luna-inspired paintings, a veterinary company sent a custom harness for his twisted legs. The goal for his surgery was within reach, a lifeline shimmering just beyond the horizon. Sage's chest swelled with gratitude, her exhaustion tempered by the warmth of strangers' love. "We're so close, sweet boy,"
she murmured, reaching into Luna's box to stroke his silvery head.
"So many people are fighting for you."
He looked up at her, his eyes, once clouded with frailty, sparkling with a flicker of life, and his tail wagged faintly, a promise in its rhythm. Sage smiled, a rare moment of peace settling over her like a blanket. She leaned back, watching as Luna batted at the toy, his movements clumsy but determined, his silvery glow a beacon in the quiet afternoon. For a heartbeat, the world felt right. Hope was winning. Love was enough. Then it happened. So sudden, so silent, it stole the air from the room. 1 second, Luna was playing, his paws flailing with innocent joy. The next, he collapsed, his tiny body crumpling to the side, still as death. The toy slipped from his grasp, rolling away as if abandoning him. Sage froze, her breath trapped in her throat, her mind refusing to process the sight. Nova's howl shattered the silence. A sound of such raw distress, it tore through Sage's chest like a blade. The shepherd lunged toward her smallest pup, nosing him frantically, her cries growing desperate as he didn't respond. "Luna!"
Sage's voice broke free, a scream of terror as she scooped up his limp form. His silvery fur was cool against her trembling hands, his chest barely moving, his heart beat a faint whisper beneath her fingers. "No, no, no, stay with me, sweet boy." She cradled him close, her tears soaking into his coat as Nova's howls filled the room. A mother's grief made sound. Claire burst in from the kitchen, her laptop clattering to the floor, her eyes wide with panic. "What happened? Sage, what's wrong?" He just stopped," Sage choked, her voice fracturing as she held Luna tighter. "He was playing, and then—" She couldn't finish, her words drowning in sobs as she rocked him, willing his heart to beat stronger, his lungs to draw breath. Claire grabbed her phone, dialing Dr. Marcus with shaking hands. "It's Luna, he's collapsed. We're coming now, please be ready." Sage didn't wait for the call to end. She stumbled to her feet. Luna clutched to her chest and ran for the car, her bare feet slipping on the porch steps as rain began to fall again, a soft, mournful drizzle that mirrored her tears. "Stay with me," she pleaded, sliding into the driver's seat, Nova leaping into the back with a whine that echoed her own desperation. "We're so close. So many people are fighting for you. Don't give up now." Her hands shook as she turned the key, the engine roaring to life as she sped toward the clinic, Luna's breaths shallow and irregular against her skin. Nova's cries rose behind her, a symphony of love and loss that drowned out the hum of the tires on wet pavement. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, a cruel beauty against the growing darkness within Sage. Luna's tiny body grew cooler in her arms with each passing mile, his heartbeat fading beneath her trembling fingers. She pressed her forehead to his, whispering through her sobs, "You're my miracle, Luna. You've defied everything. Don't leave me now." The realization hit her like a fist. All the money in the world, all the love pouring in, wouldn't matter if he couldn't hold on long enough to reach the surgery. Time was slipping through her grasp, a thief she couldn't outrun. The clinic loomed ahead, its lights a beacon in the dusk, and Sage's car screeched to a halt in the parking lot. Dr. Marcus was already there, his face etched with urgency as he rushed to her side. "Give him to me," he said, his voice calm but firm, his hands outstretched. Sage hesitated, her arms tightening around Luna, her tears falling onto his silvery fur. "Sage," he urged, softer now, "let me help him." With a shuddering breath, she surrendered her pup, watching as Dr. Marcus carried him inside, his tiny form disappearing behind the exam room door. Nova tried to follow, her claws scrabbling on the tile floor, her whines piercing the sterile air. A technician gently held her back, her voice soothing but firm. "I'm sorry, girl. You need to wait here. Dr. Marcus needs space to work." Sage sank into a chair, her hands still feeling the phantom weight of Luna's cold body, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear Claire's footsteps as her friend arrived, having followed in her own car. Claire pulled her into a tight hug, her voice fierce through her own tears. "He's going to make it, Sage. He has to." The waiting room became a prison of fear and hope, minutes stretching into hours as Sage paced, her bare feet cold against the floor, her mind a whirlwind of memories. Luna's first gasp, his faint squeaks, the world's love pouring in. Nova lay by the exam room door, her eyes never leaving it, her whimpers breaking Sage's heart anew each time. Outside, the drizzle thickened, a curtain of gray that blurred the world beyond. Then Sage's phone buzzed, a live stream popping up on social media, someone reporting Luna's rush to the vet. Within minutes, the parking lot began to fill with people, their arrival quiet, respectful, as if drawn by an unspoken call. They came with candles flickering in the rain, homemade signs clutched in their hands. "Fight, Luna, fight!" "Silver Angel," their faces etched with hope and sorrow. Children in pajamas clutched stuffed animals. Elderly couples brought chairs and thermoses of coffee. A food truck rolled in, offering free hot chocolate to the vigilant crowd. No one spoke above a whisper, as if loud voices might disturb the delicate battle within. Sage watched through the window, her breath fogging the glass, her chest tightening with a mix of awe and terror. "They're here for him," she whispered, her voice breaking as Claire squeezed her hand. Hour 4 crept in, the vigil growing as night fell, when a small girl approached Sage, her unicorn pajamas damp from the rain. She couldn't have been more than 6, her eyes wide and solemn as she held out a worn, stuffed dog. "This is Max," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "He helped me when I was in the hospital. Maybe he can help Luna too." Sage knelt, tears streaming freely now, her voice thick as she asked, "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lily," the girl replied. "I saw Luna on my mom's phone. He's like me. The doctor said I wouldn't make it, but I did." She pressed Max into Sage's hands, her small fingers warm against the cold. "He's magic. He makes scary things not so scary." Before Sage could respond, the exam room door opened. Dr. Marcus emerged, his scrubs stained, his face etched with exhaustion. The crowd outside pressed closer to the windows, holding their breath as Nova leapt to her feet, her tail rigid with tension. "He's stabilized," Dr. Marcus said, his voice hoarse but steady. "But his heart, it's worse than we thought. He needs the surgery now, tonight. We can't wait any longer." Sage's voice cracked as she clutched Max. "Can he survive it? He's so weak." "I've contacted Dr. Sarah Williams at the Advanced Veterinary Heart Center in the city," Dr. Marcus said. "She's the best cardiac surgeon in the state. She saw Luna's story and she's willing to do it tonight. But it's 3 hours away. We have to move fast." "By helicopter!" a deep voice cut in. Sage turned to see a police officer, the one who'd been managing the crowd, stepping forward. "I've called it in. Medical transport's on the way. This little guy's touched too many hearts for us to lose him now." The distant thrum of helicopter blades filled the air, a lifeline piercing the night. Sage looked down at Max, then at Lily, her voice thick with emotion. "Max is going on a trip," she said. "He's going to help Luna be brave." As the chopper landed, its lights cutting through the rain, Sage felt the world hold its breath with her. A community united, a miracle teetering on the edge, and a tiny silver puppy fighting to stay in the light. The rain had thickened into a steady curtain by the time Sage Mitchell's car tore down the dark highway, its tires humming against the wet asphalt as she chased the fading thrum of the helicopter carrying Luna. Nova lay in the back seat, her amber eyes fixed on the sky, her silence a stark contrast to the howls that had pierced the clinic parking lot moments ago. Claire drove, her hands steady on the wheel, her jaw tight with determination. Sage was in no state to navigate, her mind a storm of fear and fragile hope. The police escort, arranged by the officer who'd called in the chopper, flashed ahead, clearing their path through the midnight traffic. 3 hours stretched between them and the Advanced Veterinary Heart Center in the city. 3 hours that felt like a lifetime, each mile a thread in the unraveling tapestry of Luna's fate. Sage clutched Max, the stuffed dog Lily had given her, its worn fur damp with her tears. "He's got to make it," she whispered, her voice trembling as she pressed the toy to her chest, feeling the phantom weight of Luna's cold body still lingering in her arms. "He's fought so hard, too hard, to lose him now." Claire glanced at her, her eyes soft but resolute. "He's a fighter, Sage. Like you, like Nova. He's got the whole world behind him. You saw those people back there. He's not alone." The world indeed had not stood still. Sage's phone buzzed in her lap, its screen alight with updates, social media exploding as the helicopter's journey trended worldwide. Luna Miracle and Fly Luna Fly scrolled across platforms, news stations interrupting late-night programming to follow the tiny silver puppy's flight. In the city, people lined the streets near the veterinary center, their phones raised like beacons, their faces etched with hope under the glow of streetlights. Sage scrolled through the messages, her breath catching at the outpouring. praying from Texas. He's our little hero. My son's watching from his hospital bed in London. He says Luna's braver than anyone. The words blurred through her tears, a lifeline woven from strangers' hearts. When they finally screeched into the center's parking lot, Dr. Sarah Williams was waiting, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair and kind eyes that belied the urgency of her surgical scrubs. "Luna's here," she said softly, leading them to a consultation room as the helicopter's blades slowed to a stop outside. "He's being prepped now, but before we proceed, you need to understand what we're facing." She pulled up Luna's scans on a screen, the images stark and unforgiving, his tiny heart a maze of transposed vessels and a gaping hole between chambers. "In a normal-sized puppy, this would be challenging," she explained, her voice steady but grave. "In one as small as Luna, it's unprecedented. We'll use micro-instruments, some custom-made just for this, but it's a risk unlike any I've taken." Sage's hands tightened around Max, her voice trembling as Nova pressed against her leg, whining softly. "Can you fix it? Please? Just tell me you can fix it." Dr. Williams's face softened, a flicker of something personal breaking through her professional calm. "I've been following Luna's story since that first video," she said, her gaze distant for a moment. "My daughter showed it to me. She's 16, loves animals, and I've watched every update since. That's why I agreed to do this tonight, even though we'd normally need days to prepare. Because I've seen his fight, his spirit. Sometimes, that's the ingredient that tips the balance between possible and impossible." A nurse appeared at the door, her voice clipped. "Dr. Williams, we're ready." Sage's heart lurched, the moment crashing over her like a wave. This was it, the line between life and loss. Dr. Williams turned to leave, but Sage caught her arm, her voice a desperate whisper. "Wait, can he have this with him?" She held out Max, the stuffed dog's worn nose a testament to Lily's faith. "A little girl gave it to us. She said he's magic." For a moment, Dr. Williams looked startled, then her demeanor melted into a warm smile. "We'll put him right outside the operating room," she promised. "He'll keep watch." With that, she was gone, the door swinging shut behind her, leaving Sage, Claire, and Nova in the sterile silence of the waiting room. The next 8 hours were an eternity compressed into minutes that stretched like years. Sage paced, her bare feet cold against the tile, her hands twisting Max's fur as if it could hold her together. Claire sat beside Nova, her fingers running through the shepherd's coat, her phone buzzing with updates she relayed to the growing crowd outside, supporters who'd followed them from the clinic, joined by locals moved by the news. Restaurants sent food, strangers brought blankets and coffee, children colored pictures of Luna that plastered the waiting room walls, each a prayer in crayon and hope. Every hour, a nurse emerged with a report. "He's holding strong. The first repair is complete, Doctor. Williams is working on the second vessel now." Each word was a lifeline, shared instantly with the thousands watching online, their breaths held across continents. At hour 6, Nova suddenly stood, her ears perked forward, her body tense as if she'd heard a call no one else could. A moment later, she let out a long, low howl, not of grief, but of something primal, powerful, a sound that made everyone in the room freeze. "She knows something," Claire whispered, gripping Sage's hand, her eyes wide with awe. Sage's heart pounded, hope and fear warring in her chest as she stared at the exam room door, willing it to open. It did. Dr. Williams stepped out, still in her surgical gown, her face unreadable as she approached. The air thickened, the crowd outside pressing against the windows, their candles flickering through the rain. Nova barked, a sharp, joyful note, her tail wagging so hard her whole body shook. Sage could barely breathe, her voice a fragile thread as she asked, "Does that mean he's alive?" Dr. Williams smiled, tears gleaming in her eyes as she nodded. "The surgery's complete. It was, there's no other word for it, miraculous. Every time we hit an impossible obstacle, his little heart found a way to work with us." I've never seen anything like it." The waiting room erupted in cheers, a wave of relief crashing over them as Claire leapt up, already typing the news into her phone. Sage sank to her knees, tears spilling as she buried her face in Nova's fur, the shepherd's warmth a balm against the terror of those endless hours. "There's something else," Dr. Williams added, her voice tinged with wonder as the noise quieted. "During the surgery, we discovered why his fur has that silver sheen. It's a rare genetic condition, harmless, but so uncommon there are only a handful of documented cases worldwide. Your Luna is truly one of a kind, inside and out." A nurse appeared, holding Max, the stuffed dog now adorned with a tiny surgical mask around his neck and a bandage on his paw. "Our little patient's guardian did an excellent job," she said with a wink, handing him back to Sage. Sage clutched him close, whispering a thank you to Lily, the girl who'd believed in magic when Sage's own faith had wavered. "He's weak," Dr. Williams cautioned, her tone sobering. "The next 24 hours are critical. He's not out of the woods yet. But his heart? It's beating properly for the first time in his life." Sage nodded, her tears falling onto Max as she looked at Nova, whose joyful barks filled the room, a mother's song of triumph. Outside, the crowd had grown, their candles replaced by the warm glow of dawn breaking over the city. Strangers united by love for a tiny silver puppy cheered as the news spread, their voices rising like a hymn. In the recovery room, under the watchful eyes of his medical team, Luna took his first breaths with a newly mended heart, each one stronger, each one a victory in a battle that had brought out the best in humanity. Sage held Max, her voice a whisper lost in the celebration. "You did it, little moon. You showed us all how to fight." The sun rose, painting the sky in shades of hope, and Sage knew this wasn't the end. It was a beginning, a miracle reborn in the heartbeat of a puppy who defied the impossible. The sterile hum of the Veterinary Heart Center faded into a gentle quiet as the sun climbed higher, its rays spilling through the recovery room window to bathe Luna in a golden glow. Sage Mitchell stood at the threshold, her breath catching as she saw him, her tiny silver miracle, lying on a soft blanket, his chest rising and falling with a rhythm that felt like a gift. It had been 3 days since the surgery. 3 days since Dr. Sarah Williams had emerged with tears in her eyes to declare his heart repaired, and Sage was finally allowed to visit. She barely recognized the pup she'd held cold and still that first night. His silvery fur gleamed with a new vitality, its sheen no longer a faint whisper, but a radiant promise, catching the light as if he were woven from stardust. His eyes, once clouded with exhaustion, sparkled with life. And though he was weak, his body still frail from the ordeal, he seemed to glow from within. "Look at his color," Dr. Williams marveled, stepping beside Sage with a chart in hand. "His body's finally getting the oxygen it needs. He's literally shining from the inside out." She smiled, a rare warmth breaking through her professional calm, and Sage nodded, tears welling as she took in the sight. The IV lines snaking from Luna's tiny legs were a reminder of how close they'd come to losing him. But his steady breaths, each one stronger than the last, were a testament to the miracle he'd become. Sage knelt beside him, her hand trembling as she reached out, afraid he might dissolve like a dream under her touch. "Hey, little moon," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You made it." Luna's head lifted faintly, his ears twitching at her voice, and he let out a soft yip, a sound so pure it pierced her heart. Nova, who'd been pacing behind her, surged forward at the noise, her amber eyes wide with a mother's longing. Sage stepped aside, holding her breath as the German shepherd approached her smallest pup, her movements cautious, almost reverent. Nova sniffed him, her nose brushing his silvery fur as if testing its reality, her tail still with anticipation. Luna yipped again, stronger this time, and tried to wobble toward her, pulling at his lines in his eagerness. "Careful, little one," the nurse laughed, untangling him with gentle hands. You're still healing.
But Nova didn't wait. She nuzzled him, her tongue lapping at his face with a tenderness that brought tears to every eye in the room. Luna snuggled into her fur, his tiny body pressing against her warmth, and for a moment, the world held its breath at the purity of their reunion. A mother and child reunited against all odds. Sage sank to the floor, her knees weak as she watched, her tears falling freely now.
You never gave up on him, did you? She murmured to Nova, her hand resting on the shepherd's flank. Not for a second. Not for a...
Nova's tail wagged, a slow, proud sweep, and Sage felt the weight of their shared journey settle into something softer, something like peace. The nurses wiped their eyes, Dr. Williams turned away to hide a smile, and Claire, who'd slipped in behind them, captured the moment on her phone, her own breath hitching as she whispered,
"This is what it's all about."
But Luna's healing wasn't just a private victory. It rippled outward, touching lives beyond the sterile walls of the recovery room. Word of his surgery had spread like wildfire, the viral video now a beacon for those seeking hope. Letters began arriving at the center, their envelopes worn from travel, their words trembling with emotion. One came from a mother in Ohio. "My daughter has a heart defect. She's 6, and she's been so scared. Luna's story gave her courage. She says if he can fight, she can too."
Another from a teacher in California. "We're using Luna's journey in class to teach empathy. My students drew pictures for him." A children's book author reached out, her email glowing with excitement. "I want to tell Luna's story. Let it inspire kids everywhere." Sage read each one aloud to Claire, her voice breaking as the stack grew, each letter a thread in the web of connection Luna had woven. "He's doing more than surviving," she said, her eyes drifting to him as he rested beside Nova. "He's changing things, changing people." Claire nodded, her fingers tapping her laptop keys. "Then let's keep sharing it," she said. "The world needs this light."
A week after the surgery, Sage arrived at the center to find an unexpected visitor waiting in the reception area. Lily, the little girl who'd given them Max, standing beside her mother. Her unicorn pajamas were swapped for a bright blue dress, her eyes wide with anticipation as she clutched a small gift bag.
"We saw online that Luna's doing better,"
her mother explained, her voice soft as she watched her daughter bounce on her toes.
"She couldn't wait to see him. She's been talking about him non-stop."
The nurse brought Luna out for his daily exercise, a tiny protective vest snug over his healing chest, and Lily gasped, her hands flying to her mouth.
"He's so shiny,"
she exclaimed, her voice ringing with delight as Luna padded straight to her, his tail wagging like a metronome of joy. He sniffed her hand, then gave it a tiny lick that made her giggle, the sound bright and infectious. Sage knelt beside them, her heart swelling as she watched Luna's silvery fur catch the light, his movements stronger now, his spirit unbroken.
"See, Mommy? I told you he was magic," Lily beamed, her small fingers brushing his head. "His fur looks like starlight."
Luna barked in response, a real bark now, not the weak squeak of before, and carefully placed his paw on her knee as if sealing a bond. Lily's mother wiped tears from her eyes, her phone filming the moment as she leaned toward Sage.
"She had her last heart surgery 3 months ago,"
she said quietly, her voice thick.
"She was terrified. Wouldn't talk about it.
But following Luna's story, seeing him fight, it gave her courage. She kept saying, if Luna can do it, I can do it too." Sage's throat tightened, her eyes blurring as she looked at Lily, then at Luna, their connection a quiet miracle unfolding before her.
"He's already a healer, isn't he?"
she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The video of their meeting went viral within hours, the sight of a tiny silver puppy and a brave little girl touching hearts across the globe. Comments flooded in. "This is why we fought for him. They're both warriors, different but strong." Soon, other families began bringing their children to meet Luna, young warriors battling their own health challenges, drawing strength from his resilience. Dr. Williams watched one afternoon as Luna sat patiently beside a girl in a wheelchair, her small hand tracing his surgery scar while he rested his paw on hers, his tail wagging gently. The child's face lit up, a smile breaking through her pain, and Dr. Williams turned to Sage with a thoughtful look.
"Have you considered training him as a therapy dog?" she asked, her voice warm with possibility. "Once he's fully recovered, of course. He has a natural empathy. It's remarkable. I've seen it in how he senses who needs him most." Sage blinked, her gaze drifting to Luna as he nuzzled the girl, his silvery glow a quiet comfort. "He's already doing it, isn't he?" she said softly, her voice thick with awe. "Showing them they're not alone, that they can fight too."
The idea took root, a seed of purpose blooming in her chest. That evening, as Luna curled up for his nightly rest, Max faithfully by his side, Sage checked her phone and found a message that made her heart skip. A major children's hospital in the city, its words glowing on the screen. "We've been following Luna's story. Our cardiac ward would love to have him visit once he's stronger. These kids need to see that miracles are possible, that being different doesn't mean being less, that sometimes the smallest hearts are the strongest." Sage read it aloud to Claire, her voice trembling as she looked at Luna, now snuggled against Nova, who'd refused to return home without him. "You were never meant to just survive, were you?" she whispered, her fingers brushing his silvery fur. "You were meant to shine, for all of them." Luna lifted his head, letting out a soft woof, his eyes bright with the same fighting spirit she'd seen that first night, but now tempered with a quiet strength, a purpose that reached beyond his fragile frame. Outside, the dusk settled over the city, the sky a canvas of deepening blue, and Sage felt the weight of Luna's journey shift, not an end, but a beginning. Her tiny miracle was healing, not just in body but in spirit, his light touching lives she'd never imagined. As Nova nuzzled him proudly, Sage smiled through her tears, knowing this was only the start of a story that would glow brighter with every heartbeat. 6 months had unfurled like a gentle breeze since the night Luna's heart beat anew, and Sage Mitchell's farmhouse had become a haven of quiet triumph. The living room, once a battlefield of blood and desperation, now hummed with life. Nova sprawled on the rug, her amber eyes soft with contentment, while her puppies, Storm, Thunder, and Rain, romped in the yard, their barks a joyful chorus carried on the wind. But it was Luna who held the center of this new world, his silvery fur a beacon in the morning light streaming through the windows. He sat by Sage's feet, his tiny frame stronger now, his legs, still twisted but supported by a custom harness, carrying him with a wobbly grace that spoke of battles won. His eyes, bright and knowing, followed her every move, a bond forged in the crucible of survival glowing between them. Luna was no longer just a puppy fighting to breathe. He was a therapy dog in training, his spirit a quiet fire that warmed everyone he touched. Sage had taken Dr. Williams's suggestion to heart, enrolling him in a program that honed his natural empathy into a gift he could share. Every week they drove to the children's hospital in the city, its cardiac ward a place of fragile hope, where Luna's presence worked miracles no medicine could match. The first visit had been a revelation. Sage had watched, her chest tight with pride, as Luna padded into the ward, his harness jingling softly, his tail wagging like a metronome of joy. The children, their faces pale and their bodies tethered to machines, lit up at his approach, their small hands reaching out as if he were a piece of the sun brought down to earth. One boy, Marcus, stood out in Sage's memory, a 7-year-old with dark curls and a heart condition that had stolen his laughter, leaving him silent and withdrawn. His mother had whispered to Sage that morning, her voice trembling with exhaustion. "He hasn't spoken since his last surgery, 3 months ago. The fear's taken everything." Sage had nodded, her own throat tight as she guided Luna to his bedside, unsure what to expect. Luna had paused, his head tilting as if sensing the weight of Marcus's silence, then carefully climbed onto the bed, his movements deliberate despite his wobbly gait.
He pressed his paw against the boy's chest, right over the scar hidden beneath his gown, and rested there, his silvery fur glowing under the fluorescent lights. For a long moment, nothing happened, just the hum of machines and the soft rustle of Luna's breathing. Then Marcus's hand moved, slow and tentative, brushing against Luna's scar, a mirror to his own. "He's like me," he whispered, his voice cracked from disuse but alive with wonder. Sage's breath caught, tears springing to her eyes as Marcus's mother gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Luna barked, a gentle, encouraging sound, and nudged Max, the stuffed dog Lily had given them, toward Marcus. The boy took it, clutching it close, a smile breaking through the shadows on his face.
"He's brave," Marcus said, louder now, his eyes meeting Luna's. "Even with a bad heart, he's not scared." Sage knelt beside them, her voice thick as she murmured, "He's been through a lot, just like you. He knows what it's like to fight." Marcus nodded, his small fingers tracing Luna's harness, and from that day, he began to speak again, his words spilling out like water from a dam unblocked. His mother wrote Sage later, her letter trembling with gratitude. "Luna gave my son back to me. That little silver dog is magic. I'll never forget what he did." That moment was just the beginning. Luna's visits became a lifeline for the ward. Children who'd lost their spark found it again in his presence, their laughter echoing down the halls as he lay beside them, his paw on their hands, his tail wagging gently. He had a way of knowing who needed him most, curling up with the weakest, nudging toys toward the shy, resting his head on the laps of those too tired to move. Nurses began calling him the Silver Angel, their voices soft with awe as they watched him work his quiet magic. Parents filmed his visits, the clips spreading online, each one a testament to a puppy whose heart, once broken, now mended others. A year after his surgery, on a crisp spring morning, Sage stood in the hospital courtyard, Luna at her side as a small crowd gathered. The children, some in wheelchairs, others leaning on IV poles, rang silver bells, their chimes a delicate symphony of hope. They'd made them in art therapy, each one painted with stars and moons in honor of Luna, their tiny hands trembling with effort, but glowing with pride. "For our silver hero," a girl named Emily said, her voice clear despite the oxygen tube in her nose, as she handed Sage a bell etched with Luna's name. "Because he makes us feel brave." Sage took it, her eyes blurring with tears as she looked at Luna, now sitting tall beside her, his harness gleaming in the sunlight. "You hear that, little moon?" she whispered, her hand resting on his head. "They're ringing for you." He barked in response, a strong, clear sound that carried over the bells, his tail wagging as the children cheered. Parents wiped their eyes, their phones capturing the moment. A puppy who'd defied death now lifting spirits with every step he took. Luna's legacy grew beyond the hospital walls. The book inspired by his story hit shelves, its cover a shimmering silver with his silhouette against a starry sky, its pages filled with the journey Sage had lived, every tear, every triumph. Schools invited him to visit, children clustering around as Sage told his tale, their eyes wide with wonder as Luna rested beside them, his presence a living proof of resilience. Therapy programs across the country began studying his impact, veterinarians marveling at how a puppy with such odds could inspire new approaches to healing, both canine and human. Back at the farmhouse, Sage sorted through a fresh stack of letters one evening, the lamp casting a warm glow over the table. One caught her eye, a shaky scrawl from an elderly man in Maine. "I lost my wife last year. Watching Luna's story online gave me a reason to get up each day. He reminded me life's worth fighting for, even when it's hard." Another from a teenager in Japan. "I was bullied for my scars. Luna showed me their badges of strength. I'm not ashamed anymore." Sage read them aloud to Claire, her voice trembling as she set them down, her gaze drifting to Luna, now curled beside Nova on the rug. "He's changing the world, Claire," she said softly,
her fingers brushing the silver bell Emily had given her, its chime a faint echo in the quiet room.
One heart at a time.
Claire nodded, her laptop open to a new video. Luna with Marcus. The boy now laughing as he tossed a toy, Max tucked under his arm. "And we're just the ones lucky enough to witness it," she replied, her eyes shining with pride. That night, as the moon rose full and bright outside, Sage sat on the porch, Luna in her lap, his silvery fur cool against her skin. Nova lay beside them, her head resting on Sage's knee, a family bound by a love that had defied the impossible.
The stars glittered above, a mirror to the light Luna carried within, and Sage felt his heartbeat, strong, steady, beneath her hand. "You were always meant for this, weren't you?" she whispered, her voice a prayer in the stillness. "To show us what courage looks like." Luna tilted his head, his eyes meeting hers with a wisdom that belied his size, and let out a soft woof, a sound of agreement, of purpose. The crickets sang, the breeze carried the scent of spring, and Sage smiled through her tears, knowing his legacy was only growing, a tiny silver puppy whose fight had sparked a movement of hope, ringing out like bells across a world desperate for light. 3 years had slipped by like a river carving its path through stone, each day etching deeper lines of love and resilience into Sage Mitchell's life. On a warm spring evening, she sat on the weathered porch of her farmhouse, the air thick with the scent of blooming lilacs and the hum of crickets rising like a chorus from the fields. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in strokes of gold and pink, its fading light spilling across the yard where Luna played, a silver streak against the green. His harness, now a familiar part of him, glinted as he bounded after a group of children, their laughter ringing out like bells, their small hands clutching silver chimes that danced in the breeze. Sage leaned back in her rocking chair, her green eyes soft with a peace she'd fought hard to claim, her fingers tracing the edge of a worn letter, one of thousands that had arrived since Luna's story began. Luna was no longer the fragile pup who'd trembled in her hands that stormy night. He was a force, a living testament to what love and stubborn hope could achieve. His silvery fur, still shimmering with that rare genetic glow, had grown thicker, his body stronger despite the twisted legs he'd never outgrow. At 3 years old, he moved with a grace born of determination, his tail wagging like a metronome of joy as he darted between the children, patients from the Children's Hospital. Their families gathered for an annual celebration Sage now hosted. The event had started small, a thank you to the community that had rallied for Luna's surgery, but it had blossomed into something more, a gathering of warriors, each bearing scars of their own, united by the tiny silver dog who'd shown them how to shine. "Look at him go!" a boy named Marcus called, his voice bright as he tossed a ball Luna chased with a delighted bark. The 7-year-old from the cardiac ward, once silenced by fear, was 10 now, his curls bouncing as he ran. Max, the stuffed dog Lily had given, tucked under his arm. His mother stood nearby, her eyes glistening as she watched, her hand resting on Sage's shoulder. "I still can't believe how far he's come," she said softly, her voice thick with gratitude. "Both of them, Marcus and Luna, they saved each other that day." Sage nodded, her throat tight as she followed Luna's path, his silvery glow catching the sunset like a mirror to the sky. "They did," she murmured, her hand brushing Nova's fur where the German shepherd lay beside her, her muzzle grayer now, but her amber eyes as fierce as ever. Nova's head rested on Sage's knee, a quiet sentinel watching her smallest pup, her presence a steady heartbeat in the life they'd built. Storm, thunder, and rain had grown too, their robust forms scattered across the farm with adopters who'd fallen for their strength. But Luna had stayed, his destiny intertwined with Sage's, a bond too deep to sever. The children gathered around him now, their silver bells chiming as they sat in a circle on the grass, Luna at the center like a star in their constellation. Emily, the girl who'd given Sage the first bell, was there. 13 now, her oxygen tube replaced by a faint scar, her voice clear as she led the group in a song they'd written for him. Silver moon, light so bright, guide us through the darkest night. Their voices rose, pure and unwavering, the bells a delicate counterpoint that carried into the evening air. Parents stood on the edges, some filming, others wiping tears, their faces alight with a pride that transcended words. Sage watched, her chest swelling with an ache both tender and fierce, knowing each chime was a victory, each child a miracle Luna had touched.
"Some souls are meant to shine," a mother said beside her, her voice soft as she cradled a toddler who'd survived her own heart surgery, inspired by Luna's story. Sage turned to her, tears brimming as she nodded. "He's always been that way," she replied, her gaze drifting to Luna as he flopped onto his side, letting the children pet his silvery fur, his tail thumping contentedly. Even when he couldn't breathe, he shone, for me, for Nova, for all of them. His legacy had grown far beyond the farm, its roots sinking deep into a world hungry for hope. The book about his journey had become a bestseller, translated into a dozen languages, its pages worn by children who saw themselves in Luna's fight.
Schools taught it, therapists used it, parents read it aloud at bedtime, each copy a seed of courage planted in hearts young and old. Documentaries followed, their cameras capturing Luna's visits to hospitals, his wobbly steps a quiet defiance against the odds. Veterinary schools studied his case, marveling at how a heart so small could teach so much. New techniques for congenital defects bearing his name, a silver thread in the tapestry of science. But it was the letters that told the truest story. Thousands now, stacked in boxes that lined Sage's shelves, each one a heartbeat of connection. She'd read one that morning, its words lingering as the sun set. "I'm a nurse in Brazil. My patient, a little boy, wouldn't eat after his surgery. I showed him Luna's video and he smiled for the first time in weeks. He said, 'If Luna can fight, I can too.' He's eating now, because of your silver miracle." Another from a soldier in Germany. "I lost my leg overseas, thought my life was over. Luna's story got me out of bed. He's small, but he's stronger than me. I'm trying to be like him." Sage had wept over them, her fingers tracing the ink, knowing Luna's light reached places she'd never see. Tonight, as the sky darkened and fireflies began to wink among the lilacs, Sage stood, her voice cutting through the children's song with a gentle call. "Who wants to hear how it all started?" she asked, a ritual now, her smile warm as they cheered, clustering closer with their bells. Luna padded to her side, his harness jingling as he settled beside Nova, his eyes bright with recognition. Sage began, her voice steady but thick with emotion, recounting the stormy night, the blood, the howl, the tiny pup who wouldn't breathe. She spoke of Nova's fight, of Dr. Marcus's hands, of a world that refused to let him go. Her words painting a picture they'd heard before but never tired of, each telling a thread in the fabric of their shared history. "And then," she said, pausing as Luna barked, his tail wagging, "he took his first breath, a gasp so small you'd miss it if you weren't listening. But it was enough to change everything." The children leaned in, their bells silent now, their faces rapt as Sage's voice softened. He wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting for all of us, to show us that even the smallest hearts can hold the biggest strength. A quiet settled over the yard, the fireflies glowing brighter as the stars emerged, a mirror to the light in Luna's fur. Emily raised her hand, her voice clear in the stillness. "Miss Sage, do you think Luna knows how much he's done?" Sage looked at him, his head tilted as if listening, his eyes meeting hers with a wisdom that defied his size. "I think he does," she said softly, her hand resting on his head. "Maybe not the way we do, but he feels it. Every time he helps someone, every time he makes you smile, he knows he's here for a reason." The children nodded, their bells chiming faintly as they hugged Luna, his tail thumping against the grass. Parents gathered closer, their voices low as they shared stories. How Luna's courage had carried their families through dark days, how his visits had turned hospital rooms into places of light. One father, his voice rough with emotion, said, "My daughter's alive because she saw Luna fight. She told me, 'Daddy, if he can do it, I won't give up. She's here tonight because of him.'" Sage's tears fell silently, her heart full as she looked at Luna, the center of this circle of love. As the night deepened, the crowd thinned, families drifting home with promises to return next year, their silver bells a parting gift to the breeze. Sage stayed on the porch, Luna in her lap, Nova beside her, the three of them a quiet tableau against the starlit sky. She ran her fingers through his fur, feeling the steady beat of his heart, mended, strong, a miracle beneath her touch.
"You were meant to show us how to live, weren't you?" she whispered, her voice a prayer lost in the cricket's song. "Not just to survive, but to shine." Luna looked up, his bark ringing out, clear, strong, a testament to a life that had defied every odd. Nova joined him, her howl softer now but no less proud, a mother's echo to her son's triumph. Sage smiled, her tears catching the moonlight, knowing his light had lit the way for countless others. Children with scars, soldiers with wounds, strangers with broken dreams. His legacy wasn't just in the bells or the books, it was in the hearts he'd mended, the lives he'd touched, the hope he'd kindled across a world that needed it most. The stars burned brighter, the night folding around them like a blanket, and Sage leaned back, her little moon nestled close. "What's your miracle?" she murmured, a question to the universe, to anyone listening. "Whatever it is, hold it tight. Because if Luna taught us anything, it's that even the smallest light can change everything."